Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, wherever in the world you are. So we wait a couple of minutes that our delegates will be able to join, and then we start our first keynote speech of day 4 at SpaceGen United. Perfect. So we can start today. Again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever in the world you are. And thank you very much for joining today at our first keynote speech of the day at day 4 for the SpaceGen United. And today we start with a wonderful speech because it is my pleasure and honor to introduce you to Isabelle Duvaux-Béchon, that is today together with us. Isabelle Duvaux-Béchon is the head of the Member States Relations and Partnerships Office within the ESA Strategy Department. And today she will give you a speech on the Sustainable Development Goals and what ESA is doing also with the Sustainable Development Goals. So before giving the floor to Isabelle, as you know, if you have any questions, as you know, we will have the first speech from Isabelle, and then after we will move to the question and answer section. So for the delegates that are here on Zoom, don't forget to ask your questions on the chat here on the question and answer section. And also for the ones that are on YouTube right now, you can also ask your questions on the YouTube chat, and we will pick the questions and then we will ask these questions to Isabelle. So once again, Isabelle, thank you very much. Welcome to the SpaceGen United, and floor to you.
Thanks, Davide. So I'm very happy to be with you. I mean, with you in a remote way, but at least it allows many to be there and to attend. And I will share with you my presentation. So Davide, you just confirm when it is fine?
I confirm, I can see it, Isabelle.
Okay. So, yeah, I will try to limit myself to the 30 minutes that were given and to give you some hints on how space is supporting the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This is just to give you some ideas and the wish to go further and to try to find more about it. Just for those who might not know so well ESA, we are an intergovernmental agency. So we are not an agency of the European Union. We are an agency formed by our member states for our member states. Within our convention that dates now in 1975, the creation of ESA is to provide for and promote for exclusively peaceful purposes cooperation among European states in space research and technology and their space applications. And just as an information, the exclusively peaceful purposes doesn't mean that we are not working or that what we are doing is not used by the military, but that we are non-offensive, like all the signatories of the space treaty are, including the US, Russia, or China that have signed the same treaty. So it's the same wording, let's say. So we are there to do research and development of applications and satellites for our member states. We have today 22 member states, 19 are also member states of the EU, and we have also Norway, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom, who is now out of the EU. We have a state with a special associated agreement, which is Slovenia, cooperating states Canada since dozens of years, and cooperation agreements with the other EU member states. And for example, Latvia should soon become an associated state, as is Slovenia. So things are evolving. So you see these member states. We are one of the very few, if not only, space agencies in the world that combine all areas of space activity. We are working in really all areas, and in many cases, the agencies outside of Europe are concentrating on some, but not all of them. So this is quite important also, because this means we can provide a global answer to a certain number of topics. So it goes from space science, that includes astronomy, planetology, and this to human space flight via space transportation, Earth observation, and much more. So space science is what we call the mandatory program. Member states have to contribute pro rata to their GNP, and all other activities are optional programs. So the member states contribute if they are interested and at the level where they are interested, which is also one of the marks of the success of ESA, is that you do not force member states to participate to programs. So they can accept that other programs are done even if they are not participating. We had at the end of 2019 one of our council meeting at ministerial level. The programs were proposed around 4 programmatic pillars. The first pillar is science and exploration, where you have indeed astronomy, astrophysics, planetology, human spaceflight, and microgravity. The second pillar is safety and security. It's a new pillar. It includes security applications on Earth. It includes space safety, so the hazards coming from space, debris, asteroids, solar flares, and so on. And it includes cyber security. So this is a new pillar. Then we have the pillar application, with traditionally Earth observation, navigation, telecommunication. And the pillar that enables and supports all the others, that means that is needed if you want to be autonomous, which is space transportation, space operations, and technology. So all programs are mapped around these elements. Now talking about Sustainable Development Goals, as you surely know, these goals were adopted by the United Nations in September 2015, so nearly 5 years ago. They are supposed to be reached by 2030, so another 10 years to go, and there are 17 goals. And the purpose of the discussion is to give you some ideas of how space can support, and space can support in 2 main ways. One of these ways is via taking the temperature. The Earth observation colleagues, they are saying taking the pulse of the planet. So it's the way and possibilities to measure what's happening, to measure the levels, to measure the degradation, to identify the changes. So this is one way. But there is also one important way, which is to bring some medicine. Wants to know, what is the temperature, what is the illness. A certain number of programs, and I will give you some examples, can help bringing medicine, so helping reaching the goals. Not only saying what is the level of the problem, but also helping the problem to be solved. Very important point, space is never the only answer. And in some cases, it's not an answer. So it's not a magic tool, it's not a magic result. It is an infrastructure, or these are elements of infrastructure that can support Sustainable Development Goals. And all means can contribute. So I was mentioning we were working with many. So of course, Earth observation, at least to see what's happening on Earth in many different fields. Also positioning with Galileo, EGNOS, NAVIS. So by using positioning system, you can improve a certain number of processes. You can reduce transportation, for example, so it will save fuel and go into the good direction for decreasing needs of energy, for example, or efficiency. But there are many, many, many examples. Telecommunications, of course, is important in the process of SDG and various activities. But also human spaceflight, because a certain number of technologies that were developed for human spaceflight are useful on Earth. And I will show you also some examples. We are also dealing with operations. An example is that operations of satellite, they develop processes for the management of the satellite. Processes also valid when the probe, for example, of the rover is not under direct control of the operation center because it's too far, or when there is a failure. And there is a certain number of organizations that are interested by this type of processes to be able to help them managing crisis. For example, the World Health Organization is interested to help them managing crisis in Africa. And there are other cases where it's useful. For example, we are talking also about autonomous shipping. Those type of processes where a satellite or probe can behave and react autonomously can be useful for elements on Earth also. Also exploration, of course, many ideas there linked to human spaceflight in particular, but not only, robotics also. Robotics in hostile environment. The moon is a hostile environment, and there are places on Earth where you are also in a hostile environment, so you can get some support. And space technology is more widely. So really all means can contribute. And because we wanted to be able to pass the message and inform, we've developed an online catalog that is accessible to all. You have the address there. It was put online 2 years ago, and it includes today's more than 700 examples. We doubled the size during the lockdown period. We had some time to check a certain number of projects. And you can select, you see here the 5 Ps of the UN SDG: people, property, planet, peace, and partnership on top left. I don't know if you see my mouse on the screen, that's why I'm saying. And when you do a selection, either from one of the SDGs below or with keywords or so, you will get a selection of projects with identification of SDG that can be multiple, that are addressed by the project. And if you click there, you can go to a short description and the link to the project page. So it's something to be explored, and there is also a Twitter account, Space for Earth, that reports on ESA or other activities that have also some importance vis-à-vis SDGs, but not only. I mean, more widely, how space is supporting life on Earth. So this is something that you can explore because you will get a lot of information. Some projects are small projects, relatively old, but still interesting, and that would be interesting to restart them or to expand them. Some are large projects, large platform of information, many different types, many different activities, bringing a lot of information. And if you go in the advanced filter and download that you have on the top right of the page, you will get to this type of page. You can do a full text search. Okay, the texts are limited, but still you can find. You can select a goal. You can select an organization. Today it's ESA, but there can be others that will join. It can be a directorate and so on. When you apply, you will get the result. And if you click on download file, you will get all information available in an Excel file. So that's something that is quite useful and that can help you for your project. What is interesting to know is that we have ESA signed an agreement with UNOSA, the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, so that these data are used to feed the compendium of space solution that they are building. So there would be other elements, other activities, but these data would be the first seed of that, and it should soon be in. We are finalizing the checking of the data and the format of the data to be transferred. Now I've just some short examples and then a bit more detail then. So examples of measuring the temperature or the pulse of the planet. You have, of course, mainly Earth observation. Here it's a measurement of the nitrogen dioxide over the Earth. So you can see a lot in red, of course, the industrial areas, and you can find a number of things. So you can follow the evolution of the activity. You can have things that are useful for SDG 2, zero hunger. For example, this is soil moisture that has an impact on agriculture and production of food. You have the Charter, International Charter, Space and Major Disasters that tackles at least six goals. Because if you are able to help when there is a major disaster like a flood here, you will have some impact on poverty, on health, on economic growth, on climate action, on peace, and on partnerships, because all is done in partnerships. So just some examples of how you can measure or see what's happening, but not acting. Now some examples of what I call medicine. Here it's using technology developed for exploration to provide drinkable water in a university in Morocco. So you have an impact on SDG 3 of health, because if you provide drinkable water, you improve the health. Of course, you improve SDG 6 for water, and energy, SDG 7, because it is powered by solar power. And when there is too much solar power produced, this is used also as energy for the university or for the village. This is an example linked to health, also from exploration. You have some compact on the top right, compact apparatus that is used when astronauts are returning back to Earth, but that can be used in any place to measure vital parameters of somebody. And the one below is teleechography, where you even have the echograph that is moved by the doctor remotely. This was tested on the space station. And this can be used in any place where you don't have the doctor himself, but you have the possibility to have the apparatus. Here another example linked to energy. If you measure the quantity of water behind the dams, you can have some indication of the quantity of energy that can be produced by hydropower. So it's something also that helps there. And we have a certain number of business incubators. These are business incubators that support SDG 8 and 9. They are not in all member states, but in more member states every year. Some in clusters, and that have supported the creation of more than 5,000 jobs up to now, and 1,200 companies that were supported by this ESA BICS and the network that goes around it. Now to go into some more details on some activities. So one link, for example, to life below water, the protection of marine environment. You can see many things from space, from the satellite, Earth observation, oil leaks, water quality, and many more. Just to give you some examples, and we'll not show the 700. Technology will also support, for example, submarine operations. So for searching, but also cartography of sea bottom, helping for fishing. So also having an impact on hunger, on development of infrastructure and industry. So many different possibilities. Still on water, life below water, and peace and justice and strong institutions, so SDG 14 and 16. You can follow what's happening on the sea, so you can support maritime surveillance, maritime border control, whether the ships are allowed or not. So you can combine Earth observation with automatic identification systems to see which are the ships that are allowed to be there and which are not allowed to be there. You can combine different optical and radar means and telecommunication and many different possibilities. Galileo as such is important for a number of topics. It provides independence of Europe vis-à-vis the other owners of positioning constellation, US, Russia, and China. It allows Europe to be independent, to have its own information, and to be able, in particular, to protect its own means. It can help with all areas, I mean, surveying, construction purposes, where you can have very precise construction using positioning systems, surveillance, support to transportation, and so on. Just to give an example of the advantage of Galileo towards other systems, the Galileo as it is today, if you take the GPS, the current version of the GPS, you know on which highway you are when you are traveling, for example, by road. With the Galileo signal, you know on which track of the highway you are. So this gives you an indication of the precision, the increased precision of Galileo. Of course, GPS will have next generation and will improve, but still today, Galileo is the more precise positioning system that is available. And there were a certain number of initial services that were started some 1 or 2 years ago. There is the open service, which is the normal one that you have now in all new phones. In all new phones, you see Galileo signals. It is interoperable with the GPS, more precise, but still operable. Then there is what is not yet available or not so fully is the public regulated service, which is encrypted and reserved for governmental users. And then search and rescue service. This is the first positioning constellation that has it. The other are installed on normal Cospas-Sarsat system, which is a distress signal, where the people on land or in ship or plane also that will activate their distress beacon, they can be received by the Galileo constellation, at least all the new satellites. And what is even more important, this is the only system that will send back to the user a signal saying that it was received, that the distress signal was received. So it helps people to know that they were heard, that something has heard, and that the emergency rescue was on road. As well mentioning automatic identification system, and we have the small satellites plus a beacon installed on the ISS. The problem automatic identification system is made to prevent collision, but it was until a few years ago only accessible when you are close to the shore, because the receiving beacons were on the shores or between vessels. So with the satellite IAS, you can follow all what's happening on the oceans, and combining with the Earth observation, if you detect a ship that has no AIS, it means two things. Either its AIS signal is as a failure, which might be a problem to avoid collision, or it is a ship that is not authorized in this area. So you can send police or Coast Guard to check what's happening when you detect a satellite with Earth observation and it has no AIS. Another example, it's fishing surveillance. The illegal fishing is, there are a certain number of countries where illegal fishing is really developed. In fact, it's called IUU, illegal, unlicensed, and reported. And using a combination of radar imagery and the fact that the authorized ships have a transponder that allows to identify them. This is a project developed with the World Bank, and you can see in red on the image the ones that are not authorized to be there, and in green the ones that are authorized. The problem of the non-authorized is that they distort totally the market, the fish market, and this creates hunger problem in this country. So it's very important to fight them. Related to health, so there are many. I will not detail. Human physiology research that is useful also later on Earth, not only for the astronauts, but also for normal human beings. Biology research done in microgravity, for example, that has impact on the research, on the knowledge, and to improve a certain number of things on Earth. And also what is linked to wound healing, aging, what happens in space, so the organism adapts and changes in ways that could mirror some other factors. For example, it is known that there is a calcium depredation in space that can be compared to osteoporosis on Earth. So there are ways to find countermeasures and medicine for that, thanks to human spaceflight. Relevant to water and agriculture, but also, as you can see, this has an impact also directly to health, sustainable cities or consumption. There is a project since more than 30 years that's called MELISA, Regenerative Life Support System. What is linked to deep space habitat and how also, in general, what is linked to human life. Here you have the Concordia Franco-Italian station in the Antarctic, and they use since 15 or 20 years this equipment now that is treatment of grey water with space technology developed for Melissa. Grey water is the water from the shower and the sink that is transformed into drinkable water to limit the waste of water and fresh water. So this is working quite well. Also, a lot of studies linked to growing plants or animals, and so to be able to have better ways that use less energy, less consumables to grow places. And again, this water production, it's the same technology that is used in Concordia that was used in Morocco, and that was developed beginning of the year or last year in a new test house in Monaco that uses a lot of new technologies, new efficient technologies. For urban development, you can follow from space the development of urban area here in Tanzania, which will have an impact on the life of the people, because in many cases it's uncontrolled development. And if you know what's happening, the state can plan installation of hospitals, installation of schools, installation of water and sanitation, development of cities, and can follow what's happening much better. Wildfire can be followed and identified from space. Okay, this is a compilation of data. Education can be supported with a communication system in remote area or underserved area. It can be the project that is shown here was developed in South Africa, but also in South Italy, because there are places that are isolated from everywhere. And it's providing communication, but also providing courses. In that case, courses to raise environmental awareness of the children, so that they can also train later to become people that will protect their environment, work on protected areas. So this type of project serves, of course, education, of course, gender equality, because you bring also girls to school. It helps developing growth and action on climate, because they will be trained on that. Another example here that's linked to the climate and responsible consumption, growth and energy. It is how to help the ships getting a route that would be safer for coastal navigation and with the lowest possible fuel consumption or pollution. So there are many activities like that can help providing this type of services and helping the ships, in that case, finding the best route for many advantages. Just towards the end, so we have also web pages. The motto is Space for Earth, with a certain number of geographical area and themes. So geographical area, the ones also that member states want us to work on. Africa, blue world for all the oceans, Arctic, Antarctic. And by theme, health, sustainable development and migration, where the SDG can be, but not only, energy, and there is one on the preparation for space for security. Just an example of these pages, in fact, and a few articles and groups, all the news items from ESA program that have a link to one of these themes of geography. So the last one, for example, we had a long one on the blue world, but there is task force in working. Data relay satellite helping Earth observation image coming quickly on the ground, following icebergs for climate change, melting, a lot of Earth observation, various satellites, the new contract for Copernicus, and so on and so on. So you will find a lot of things here if you want to follow what's happening. Not only an SDG, but a lot. More or less, just to say, any of our programs can be linked to at least one SDG. Even if it's not visible, it has an impact on industry, because it gives work also, or to innovation also. So it's really, SDG are really everywhere. And so we try to have this coordinated approach to show in one place, so the category Space for Earth, all the programs, because it's not the fact of one program or one activity that supports, it's really all of them. And trying to pass the information and make the links with the users. So the links you already had, and so thank you for your attention. I think it was more or less in time.
Yes, it was.
So, okay.
Yes, thank
So
you
now,
very much.
okay, I was recovering my mouse for that, and I will put my video on again. Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, okay. It was. I didn't look at the clock, but it was more or less the 30 minutes.
Right on time, right on time. Thank you very much, Isabelle. Honestly, the presentation was really inspiring, and also, you know, you really shown how is address, you know, different SDGs, as well as, you know, what's your mandate. So, I mean, I think that, and we have also some questions here for you. You know,
Okay.
you inspired, of course, our delegates as well. And so, considering this, I would say that then we can start looking at the different questions that we received. And a question that arrived from one of the delegates is from Roxy. And the question is, has the European Space Agency considered on collaborating with emerging space countries for the development of space industry or space projects?
We are working, and we have agreement with a certain number of countries, including emerging. Our aim, and the aim given by the member state, we only do what they want, is to develop European industry. So we are not allowed, for example, to give a contract to a non-European industry. But of course, there are discussions, there are agreements. I can just mention, for example, 1 year ago, I was with DG and a few colleagues in South Africa, where we had a workshop, 2-3 days workshop with the South African Space Agency to define, to identify elements of collaboration and cooperation on various topics. There are, so for example, also agreement with Gabon, because there is a ground station in Libreville. So in exchange, there are some cooperation there, or with other countries. But in many cases, it's not to give money to the industry. But I was mentioning with the example of the illegal fishing in Africa, that it is a project with the World Bank. So in fact, we have agreement with the World Bank or Asian Development Banks to develop projects that they will use when they discuss in their agreement with the states there. So there are some possibilities via the World Bank, via the Asian Development Bank. There are also projects linked to global development assistance, where there is some funding that is routed via space, so that could support development of activities there.
Yes, in fact, I think it's true at the end, and ESA, as you said, collaborates also, you know, through different ways, you know, also to make sure that, you know, this impact can be considered, definitely. And
just one point is that, for example, the images of the Copernicus images coming from the Sentinel satellites, they are free for all in the world. So it's not the development of industry, of course, but the usage of the image is free. So anyone that wants to develop a specific application or use an application can download these images and use them. So it's also a way to support and not limit the support to the countries that funded the satellite.
Yes, exactly. It's true, and I mean, that's definitely an answer that, of course, I guess that I hope that Roxy completely understood. So thank you, Isabelle, for that. And
I think that's the answer.
No,
you might not get the answer, but it is the answer.
Of course, this is the answer. This is the answer, absolutely. And so this is a question also that came out. That is, how long does it usually take to provide information to member states, or in the case non-member states who request data imagery with country in respect to the Sustainable Development Goals?
Okay. Again, the Copernicus data is available. So for the one who are registered users, they can just download data as soon as they are put in the database. And there are some 250 terabytes of data every day that are available. If it is a specific request for a specific application, it depends if it exists. If somebody is in charge of that, can be a private company, can be so. There is no. What is granted is that the images are available, not that they would be treated for a specific purpose. There are cases, for example, there are the Copernicus services. So a certain number of services were developed by ESA, and then they are operated under Copernicus agreements by EMSA or by others. But in that case, it might be reserved for Europe. This I don't know. We have to check the Copernicus services. So it's not so much a question of time than a question to know what is the status of the thing. Somebody cannot come to ESA and ask for a specific application or specific treatment of the data. We are not a service provider. We are developing satellites for our member states, and we are not allowed to do commercial to do benefits.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's important to make sure the distinction between, of course, like the European Space Agency and, of course, with the private industries. So, no, that's definitely a valid answer. And of course, thank you so much for this, Isabelle. Another question that came out is this one related to the problem of the climate change. So, how does the European Space Agency project the problem of the climate change and other environmental issues to be reduced, and so start living without any future complications in the future?
We cannot, as such, reduce what's happening alone. We can measure what's happening so that at least the governments will have factual, non-biased information. The satellite is just measuring what's happening. It's not biased by anybody. So this is one element. Now, a certain number of projects, this is what I was calling the medicine. So you have to know first what's happening and why, and then you have to find some mitigation action. So if you use more telecommunications, you might need less travels. We've seen that with the lockdown, COVID, and so on, changing the meetings into virtual meetings, and thus reducing the pollution of that. But it was a short term; it's not a long term. So it's also by the use of space technologies that are often low energy consumption, low weight, and so on, because if you want to go to the satellite, you have to minimize everything. So this transfer of technology can be important to develop things on Earth. I was mentioning MEDISA for the water treatment, so it's a way to have drinkable water, but they are also, for example, working on algae growth, cyanobacteria growth, spirulina, that you can grow anywhere, and you can get high protein content that just needs water and sun. So there are many things that can be used to help, but it has to be a government decision to do something, or industry decision to behave differently. What we try to do ourselves is to be a responsible organization. So reducing our own consumption, reducing our own impact. It's not enough to have an impact. What I think that we might not be able to reduce the climate warming, the global warming. We know it exists, but at least to limit if possible, or to find mitigation possibilities or how to adapt.
Yes, exactly. I agree. And as you said before, space is not always the answer, no, for addressing all the sustainable development goals. It's like
no, it's one tool.
Yeah,
it's one tool. You have to think about it, not to forget it. It's an infrastructure. It's a tool among many others.
Yes.
The interest for observation is that it's unbiased, and half of the essential climate variable can only be measured from space. So you need space to know what happens, but that's not enough.
Yes. Yes, I completely agree on this, and yeah, it's true. And thank you for your answer as well. So. This is a comment for you, Isabelle, in general, that is again from Roxy.
The one of Roxy?
Sorry? Yes, the one from Roxy. So this is not a question, but I would like to say to Mr. Duvaux-Bechon that I'm very proud of seeing a woman leading and working in the space industry. So this is something
we are. We are some, not many, but we are some, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, these are really great comments that I completely agree on it as well. And honestly, we can make the link maybe to this question that, as you can see here, the question that is coming from Fanny is also in terms, you know, for the SDG gender equality, what are the measures taken by ESA to ensure more women that are actually involved in the space sector?
Yeah, there are many measures. We have a chief diversity officer at ESA, advising Director General on those questions. And ESA even won the Diversity Award of IAF this year. What is being done is always to make sure that when there are women applying to a job, they will be considered if they have, of course, the qualifications that are needed. There are also many events organized in our member state to be able to push to explain what ESA is doing, to try to pass the messages to women and to men. It's something that where you have to be a bit proactive on that. There are still too many young girls or women who do not think that they can go into this direction when it is possible. So it's not a matter of hiring only women, because this is not a solution. But it's making sure that women will know that it is feasible, that there are action for that, and that there is a real wish to develop that, to have a more balanced society as in the external society. The importance of the balance, the importance of the different ways of tackling problems that men and women have, even between two women or two men, it might not be the same way, but to have really balanced ways. So it's working with that, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, this is exactly a valid point. And I see as well, Isabelle, that you have the questions in front of you. So
this is on the military and the peaceful use and the police and so on. Yeah.
Sure. If
yeah,
you like to answer this one, go for it.
Because as I mentioned, I'm also working on the space for security. So in the convention, it is mentioned that we're working for exclusively peaceful purposes. If you had a look into the law of 1967 outer space laws, you will see exactly that it is for peaceful purposes. In this law, it complements that it is no massive destruction weapons. So in the treaty, it's especially what is especially forbidden is not to put weapons; it's to put massive destruction weapons in space. So we kept this wording of peaceful purposes. That means peaceful means can also mean maintaining peace. So for us, it means non-offensive. But you have a lot of military and so on that have peacekeeping functions. The border might be limited, but still we know that the armed forces are using satellite images. Our satellite images are military ones, we know. Telecommunication satellites, GPS, clearly. Galileo, GPS is even a military system, when Galileo is a civil system, but it is used by armed forces. So our point for us is not to do ourselves armament or so on, but the use of it, and in many cases it's what we always call the dual use. It's impossible to make the difference. If you take the Coast Guard function, depending on the member states, these are civil personnel or military personnel. Why would you allow only the one with civil personnel to use the systems and not the one military personnel who do exactly the same job? Just that it is organized differently in the states. And we work with the armed forces also. We know that. I am a reserve Navy officer. Following training I had at ESA, I applied. ESA knows there is no problem, and I'm not the only one in that case. If you want to support, and the member state want to support border control, maritime control, security of the countries, of course, at some point in time, there might be armed forces in the thing. So, at least what we know is that our satellite, the resolution of our Earth observation satellite, cannot be used to target somewhere, because it's not precise enough. It's done for environment purposes. But they can still look at wide area, wide ranges. And there was a question along the police or something. What the Space Force Security we're working on, and particularly the ones of Earth observation, they explicitly have as users what they call the blue forces. So police, customs, Coast Guard, and so on. So it's part of our potential customers or users of the companies. And it is part of the state, of the policies of the state and maintenance of the state. So it works.
Yes, exactly. And honestly, it really creates, the picture of really, what ESA is doing also from this front. So, it's important to know also on this specific part. And of course, thank you for your answer, Isabelle, on this. And this is another question that you can see here from Dorcas that I'm saying also from the people that are watching us on YouTube. So considering that the pandemic has closed down different educational systems, especially in the developing countries like Africa, what is ESA, how is ESA contributing to the Sustainable Development Goal number 4, quality education in this location? And what are the future plans to do so in the case the European Space Agency does it?
Concerning education, so I showed one of the projects. The main problem is getting telecommunications. And it's not something that we can do. We are not there to implement telecommunication systems in the countries. But what we are doing in telecommunication to help European companies to develop further, to develop new technologies, to be competitive, can contribute to the telecommunication offer worldwide. And what we have is also a lot of content that can be used by anybody. We have an education website that is done for students and for educators with a lot of teaching tools available freely, some multilingual, some are based on curricula. So once the telecommunication exists or one signal, this can be used. And they cover different areas, so this is one way where we can help. But still the telecommunication system has to be there. So it can be via, in both cases in Africa, it will have to be via satellite, because there will not be the possibility to install ground infrastructure everywhere. So it has to come from a satellite provider. We are not a satellite provider in the sense of telecommunication provider. But the tools can be useful, plus a certain number of ways to check how it can work and so on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And honestly, talking about the satellite provider, this is a question that came out also more from me as well, because this is a point that really got me curious about what ESA is doing with autonomous shipping, as you mentioned before. So for the autonomous shipping, as you said, ESA is not a satellite provider, no? So in this case, what is the contribution of ESA for this specific point?
Yeah. This is in the frame of the preparation of the future. The topic that we started, at a large scale, because it was, I started it some years ago. But since last year, we have this Blue World Task Force with the member states, which is to work at least for the next 3 years to support preparation of next programs in the frame of what will be needed by the maritime economy and maritime world. And for me, I decided myself alone that the topic of autonomous shipping was one of the topics that might need technologies and new developments. Knowledge of the environment, there are many satellites doing it, they are working on it, developing the next one and so on. For autonomous shipping, if really you want to develop that, you will need to be able to propose or to have satellite means. It cannot be done without satellites. So it's one of the topics that is very complex. And then also it's something where it is worth starting discussing now of what will be the needs of the ground sector, so that we can maybe embed some of the needs into the future programs. So not to be the provider for autonomous shipping, but to help in what we are doing with the development of future program, that some of the potential services, applications, or technology might be useful to help autonomous shipping reach the next step. So it's this type of process. And for example, working with people like the World Ocean Council, that groups the maritime representatives of the maritime world in all the world, to have possibilities, because they have something like 35,000 contact points or so, to have the possibility to ask questions, pass message, and understand well, but also working with our member state, part of the task force. I have 19 member states that are part of the task force out of the 22, and asking them also to identify what are their needs nationally linked to the blue world, maritime economy, and so on. It's trying to build a future program on the needs.
Yeah, absolutely. No, then thank you very much for this answer, because this also got me curious as well about what we were talking before. So there is a really nice question that I will leave at the end. That is the one that is related to your years of experience. But I mean, as you know, we are here also because we are together with young professionals and students. So I will leave this question at the end, because it's a really nice one. And so since we have still 5, 7, 6 minutes, maybe I can ask you the question that is, does ESA use artificial intelligence from some projects in the ISS, and how you use it?
Well, artificial intelligence is in many places. I don't have details there, but of course it's one of the topics. It's one of the topics also when there is a question on opposing ESA and new space, and saying there is ESA and then there is new space. One of the answers of the DG is that we are already in new space, because we have developed new ways of contracting, because we develop artificial intelligence, because we develop agility, and so on and so on. So indeed, artificial intelligence is one of the topics. Yes, I was mentioning at the beginning the operations center. They have developed, and I think some are available and for free use, via artificial intelligence, analysis of data, of big quantity of data, to be able to extract patterns, slow moving, slow changes, and so on. So this is one example, but there are many others. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Isabelle. And so
I see that there is also a question on the international interns of employees.
Yes.
Today, the limits are to be a member of the member states of ESA, and in some cases also of the associate states, not from outside the member states of ESA. We are not authorized for that. But of course, there can be in partnerships. Without being at ESA, there is a possibility to be in some from other states. Or when we work with a university, we don't check the nationality of the students of the university. For example, we have what's called ESA Lab. You can find information on the Space for Earth pages, where it is agreement between University of Vision Center and ESA, non-exchange of funds, to work together or support on specific topics and activities. So if it is with a university in Europe and the students are non-European, this is not a problem, but not to have at ESA, not for the moment.
Thank you, Isabelle. So I would say that I leave then this final question, since we have 5 minutes left.
Because the question on the new DG and
yes. So, but I think it's important. We are here together, as we say, SpaceGen United. During unfortunately not these global developments that we're having this year, it's important that you give us as well a sort of inspiration. No? As you know, we are wholly here young students, young professionals, and the question is this one. So, Isabelle, you have 33 years of experience within the European Space Agency and space industry in general. So what's your advice to young professionals starting out in the space sector?
An advice I got when I was a student from one of the former directors of ESA was to start with industry. Don't try to go in an agency or so before knowing what is industry. And I think it was valid. It was something valid because it's where you touch the project, the thing where you build them. Space sector is small and is wide. Many things happened. Also, an element is don't block yourself on working with hard space industry. What will develop, what the needs will be on the applications and services. This is still not considered by many as being the core noble part of space. But if you just build a satellite and you do nothing with what comes out of it, it's of no use. So applications, services, inventing new ways of inventing, there is a lot to be done there. Because the satellites exist, the constellation exists, the data exists, there will be new ones, but I'm sure there, with the existing data, many things that can be done. And inventing how the data and the tools and so on can help life. There are, no doubt on that.
That's a great advice. Super inspiring, honestly, and it's true. It's true. Honestly, I think that starting from the industry, will make you understand how the processes are in order to then, move to the agency, as you said. And in the case, there is the wish, of course, from the young professionals to make so.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. So I guess that at this stage we have really 1 minute left. So I would say that Isabelle, if it's fine for you.
Just a point on the new Director General.
Yes. So the question is for the YouTube people that are not able to see it. So I can say it immediately. So how will the European Space Agency change with the new director that will be next year?
Mm.
Will he have the freedom to change the strategy, or is this something that is fixed with the member states?
So any Director General can propose what he wants. Of course, it has to be accepted by the member states. So because they are the customers. So if he proposes to them something that they like, it's fine. This is also that we are trying to starting now, to build the next program, starting with the needs of the member states and the non-space policies that are most important to their country, to be able to develop really from the needs, and thus have better chances that the strategy will be accepted. But of course, it's the member state that decide, and they have to agree, all of them together. So it's not easy.
Not at all.
And the potential in Africa for space collaboration. Well, there are already some collaboration with some states. There are collaboration. Maybe it should be seen with UNOSA first, because they have regional centers in Africa that work on application and services. So maybe the first thing would be to see with UNOSA, for example, what type of collaboration they can build. And there will be the creation of the African Space Agency in Egypt.
Perfect. Isabelle, like the presentation, right on time. Perfect. And of course, we can see with the final comment also from Alina. Thank you very much, Isabelle and David. And also, of course, it's also
okay.
Thank you very much, Isabelle, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
It has really been a great pleasure. And again, thank you very much for joining us at the SpaceGen United. And that's it for today. So we're going to close the keynote speech for today. And as you know, then we will have another keynote speech in a couple of hours.
Yes.
So, Isabelle, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you. And good luck for all what's your plans and what you want to develop. Don't forget the application.